Hundreds of drug dealers have been arrested, millions of dollars in narcotics confiscated. It's being called one of the biggest cyber criminal takedowns of all time, and it was all headquartered by the FBI out of San Diego. Our Jeff McAdam is learning more about this takedown, and he joins us live from downtown with the details on that.
Hi, Maria. Yeah, police agencies from all over the world were working here with the FBI so that these takedowns, these arrests could happen all roughly at the same time. The element of surprise on their side, and how they did it all might be the most impressive and interesting part.
At 4:58 a.m., the Pacific sky above San Diego was still dark when a convoy of unmarked federal SUVs rolled quietly into a gated neighborhood overlooking Mission Bay. The homes in this enclave belonged to business executives, attorneys, and public officials. It was the last place anyone would expect a cartel-linked investigation to explode into public view. But this was not a routine warrant. After 22 months of surveillance, wiretaps, financial tracing, and undercover coordination, the FBI and ICE Homeland Security investigations were about to execute one of the most complex white-collar cartel takedowns in recent California history. The target was not a street-level trafficker or warehouse operator. The warrant named a sitting San Diego City development official, a man who had spent years appearing at ribbon-cutting ceremonies and infrastructure press conferences. To colleagues, he was polished, well-spoken, and politically connected. To federal investigators, he was the financial architect of a gold-based laundering system tied to transnational cartel networks moving narcotics through Southern California. When the breach signal came, tactical teams moved fast. Agents secured the front entrance while others swept the perimeter. Inside the modern hillside mansion, federal officers encountered safes, encrypted devices, and a hidden storage chamber beneath a reinforced subfloor. What they discovered in the hours that followed stunned even seasoned investigators. Stacked inside climate-controlled vault units were gold bars. Not jewelry, not small private holdings, industrial-scale bullion. By the end of the seizure operation, federal authorities confirmed the confiscation of approximately 5.5 metric tons of gold, valued at roughly $180 million based on current market rates. Alongside the bullion were ledgers, international transfer records, and coded communications linking shipments of precious metals to narcotics revenue streams flowing north from Mexico. The operation had been in motion for nearly 2 years. The first signal came from irregular financial reporting tied to shell corporations registered in Nevada and Delaware. Analysts at Homeland Security Investigations noticed recurring high-value transactions labeled as construction material imports and metals recycling. But the shipments didn't match port documentation. Containers arriving at the port of San Diego declared low-value scrap material, yet insurance policies attached to those shipments reflected vastly higher valuation. When agents conducted discrete inspections on selected containers, they found something else entirely. Instead of scrap, shipments contained processed gold bars cast in foreign refineries, some stamped with markings tied to known laundering corridors in Latin America and East Asia. The gold had been melted and recast multiple times, erasing origin signatures typically used to track sourcing. Investigators began connecting the dots. Drug proceeds generated from fentanyl, cocaine, and meth distribution in the southwestern United States were being converted into bulk cash. That cash was transported south, consolidated, and used to purchase gold through intermediaries. The gold was then shipped back into the U.S. under falsified declarations, stored, and gradually liquidated through legitimate commodity brokers. Clean money emerged from what looked like lawful precious metal trades. But the scheme required protection. That protection allegedly came from inside local government. According to the federal indictment unsealed following the raid, the San Diego official used his authority to influence zoning approvals, warehouse inspections, and port-related oversight processes. Storage facilities linked to the network passed compliance checks with minimal scrutiny. Licensing issues were quietly resolved. Competing investigations stalled. Meanwhile, gold shipments increased. Over 22 months, federal agents monitored warehouse traffic patterns, intercepted encrypted messaging between logistics coordinators, and mapped financial flows spanning California, Arizona, Nevada, Mexico, Panama, and the United Arab Emirates. Surveillance footage captured after-hours deliveries guarded by private security contractors with no declared commercial purpose. As the case expanded, the Drug Enforcement Administration joined the task force after fentanyl seizures in Riverside and Imperial counties revealed packaging similarities linked to the same laundering network. Narcotics moving through California were tied directly to financial entries found in preliminary gold shipment logs. The cartel did not just move drugs, it moved value. Gold provided the perfect vehicle. Unlike wire transfers, bullion leaves no digital footprint unless voluntarily disclosed. It can be melted, recast, subdivided, or transported across borders with limited electronic trace. For transnational criminal enterprises facing tightened banking oversight, gold became a silent currency. Federal forensic accountants uncovered internal spreadsheets labeled only by month and weight. One entry detailed 5.2 transfer complete, SD hold. Another listed refine, recast, reissue domestic. These entries corresponded directly to warehouse delivery records, but perhaps the most damning damaging evidence came from recorded meetings obtained through court-authorized wire intercepts. In those conversations, coded language referenced civic clearance, inspection shields, and expedited permit protection. Prosecutors allege those phrases referred to direct intervention by the San Diego official to shield cartel-linked storage operations from scrutiny. The raid did not stop at one residence. Simultaneous warrants were executed across 14 locations, including bonded warehouses near Otay Mesa, a private vault storage facility downtown, and 2 financial advisory offices suspected of facilitating liquidation transactions. At one vault site, agents discovered additional gold bars and $12 million in bundled U.S. currency stored in sealed containers labeled as industrial equipment parts. In total, authorities reported seizures exceeding 5.5 tons of gold and roughly $23 million in liquid assets during the coordinated action phase. The fallout was immediate. The City Hall placed the official on emergency administrative suspension pending formal proceeding. Federal prosecutors announced charges including conspiracy to launder monetary instruments, racketeering conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and aiding transnational criminal enterprise activity. If convicted, sentencing guidelines could exceed decades in federal custody. At a press conference later that week, federal officials described the investigation as a systemic exploitation of legitimate infrastructure. They emphasized that the case demonstrated how organized crime adapts to financial enforcement pressure by embedding itself within lawful commodity markets. Gold prices fluctuated in the days following the announcement as analysts speculated about the impact of such a significant bullion seizure entering forfeiture channels. Commodity experts noted that while 5.5 tons represents a small fraction of global reserves, the symbolic impact of cartel-linked gold infiltration into U.S. civic structures carried broader implications. Meanwhile, investigators continued examining whether additional public officials had knowledge of or indirect involvement in the permitting protections. Internal audit teams began reviewing zoning approvals and inspection records tied to at least 32 facilities flagged during the 22-month probe. Federal agents stressed that the investigation remained active and that more indictments could follow. For residents of San Diego, the revelation was unsettling. The idea that cartel revenue had not only moved through border corridors but been stored in hillside estates under the protection of a city development office shattered assumptions about how far criminal enterprise could penetrate civic systems. Community leaders called for transparency reforms, mandatory financial disclosure expansions, and independent oversight reviews of municipal permitting processes. State legislators signaled potential hearings into commodity-based laundering schemes. The broader lesson extended beyond one city. Transnational criminal organizations increasingly rely on asset conversion strategies that bypass traditional banking channels. Gold, cryptocurrency, luxury, real estate, and art have all become vehicles for value storage when cash becomes too risky to hold. In this case, investigators believe the gold served 2 purposes: preservation of wealth and strategic hedge against currency tracking enforcement. Once narcotics revenue was converted to bullion, it could be held offshore, leveraged for loans, or discreetly resold through commodity exchanges. Federal agencies described the San Diego case as a blueprint for how modern cartel finance operates: decentralized, adaptive, and deeply intertwined with legitimate markets. The 22-month investigation required coordination between ICE, FBI, DEA, IRS, criminal investigation, customs and border protection, and international financial intelligence units. Analysts worked through thousands of trade manifests, cross-border shipment declarations, and customs irregularity reports before enough probable cause emerged to justify the synchronized takedown. Officials stated that had the network remained undetected, additional gold shipments estimated at nearly 2 metric tons were scheduled for arrival within the next quarter. As evidence processing continues, forensic metallurgical testing is being conducted to determine origin points of the seized bullion. Early assessments suggest multiple smelting locations were involved, likely to obscure traceability. The case now moves into the federal court system, where prosecutors will attempt to demonstrate that civic authority was weaponized to facilitate transnational laundering at industrial scale. For law enforcement agencies, the operation underscores the evolving battlefield of financial crime. It is no longer confined to offshore bank accounts or wire transfers. It now moves through physical commodities, municipal processes, and legitimate trade channels. So for the public, it raises a difficult but necessary question: how resilient are our institutions when organized crime shifts from street-level violence to boardroom strategy? One early morning raid in San Diego answered part of that question. Behind reinforced floors and polished political speeches sat 5.5 tons of gold. Silent, heavy proof that modern cartel power is measured not only in narcotics shipments, but in the weight of assets hidden in plain sight. If accountability matters to you, stay informed about cases like this. Complex financial crime rarely makes loud headlines until it collapses. Transparency, oversight, and sustained investigative work are what bring it to light.